That major twist in the impeachment showdown, a key witness has now reversed himself and conceded that there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine, contradicting Trump's core defense. Our senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce on Capitol Hill with the latest. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. Gordon Sondland was the president's handpicked point person in Ukraine, a Trump mega donor turned diplomat. He was quick to defend the president and initially testified that he could not recall many of the details, but other key witnesses here did, raising questions about whether Sondland was telling the truth. And now, facing growing pressure, Sondland has revised his testimony. In a stunning reversal, Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, revising his testimony, detailing a quid pro quo with Ukraine, saying he told a top Ukrainian official they would likely not receive $400 million in military aid unless they publicly committed to investigate Trump's political rivals. That's not what he initially testified. When asked if there were any preconditions on the aid, Sondland originally answered no. But Sondland says his memory was, quote, refreshed by other key witnesses who contradicted his initial testimony.
It's never too late to do the right thing.
In a text exchange with another U.S. diplomat in September, Sondland claimed the president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind, which Trump often pointed to in his defense.
The ambassador, who I heard was tremendous and a tremendous person, he was 100% for what we're saying, 100%. And if you look, he also said there was no quid pro quo. That's the whole ballgame.
But Sondland told investigators he was just repeating what the president told him on a phone call. Sondland also said the president delegated Ukraine policy to his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, that the president just kept saying, talk to Rudy, and that the State Department was aware. Sondland says when he discussed Giuliani's role with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Pompeo rolled his eyes and said, yes, it's something we have to deal with. The White House is dismissing Sondland's revised testimony, and the top Republican in the Senate says it's not likely to sway Republicans.
I will say I'm pretty sure how it's likely to end. If it were today, I don't think there's any question it would not lead to a removal.
House investigators are now summoning the president's acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to testify here on Friday. Mulvaney, of course, undercut the president's defense when he admitted that there was a quid pro quo during a press briefing last month, a statement that Mulvaney later retracted. But the White House has instructed officials not to comply with this inquiry, and George Mulvaney is not expected to appear.
Okay, Mary, thanks very much. Let's bring in our legal analyst, Kate Shaw, constitutional law professor. And let's begin. I think a lot of people don't know that you can actually go back and revise your testimony in the Congress, but he was doing this because he feared threat of prosecution.
Right. I mean, I think he was facing a very real perjury possibility, right? So his testimony looked quite different and very much contradicted by some of this testimony we've seen come out over the last 24 hours. And I think he was rightly concerned about the possibility of perjury exposure. So I think that's why we've seen these revisions now.
So you've got the evidence piling up that there in fact was a quid pro quo. It kind of undercuts the president's defense and narrows the options for the president's defenders.
Yeah. I mean, look, so they have staked so much on this argument that there was no quid pro quo. And I think that has totally collapsed at this point. And it's not just the president, but his congressional allies who have been all in on this no quid pro quo. So
especially his original testimony, Sondland's original testimony.
Absolutely. And I think that they need to scramble to find a new strategy. I mean, one thing they might do is say, okay, so there was a quid pro quo, but that's diplomacy. Exchanges and promises and even threats are part of diplomacy. And that's true, but diplomacy is about the U.S. national interests, right? Using governmental resources to advance personal political objectives. That's not diplomacy. That looks like corruption.
So then that leaves one final possibility. They can say, you know what, the president did was wrong, but it's not impeachable.
Right. And I mean, I think that the views of the American public on just how wrong this conduct was will be really significant. And I think we will see, you know, every time I think the president and his team require congressional allies to sort of scramble to find some new sort of path, you know, you could see a weakening of the support. And I think that as sort of we see polls shift, I think that the dynamics on the Hill could very much change. But I think that if there's already going to be a concession that something wrong happened, it's a question of just how serious that is. But if it looks like abuse of power and corruption, those are sort of at the heart of what the impeachment process is designed to target.
Finally, we have the president now putting up a wall from all of his aides testifying, all of his close aides. How strong an article of impeachment for obstruction will that be? That's what Adam Schiff, the chairman, has said he's going to try to do.
Yeah, and one of the articles of impeachment against President Nixon was obstruction and non-cooperation with Congress specifically. So there is precedent for drafting an article that is totally based on this failure to cooperate with Congress. I mean, I think that the substantive offenses will make for stronger articles of impeachment, but I would expect them to add one along those lines as well.
Kate Shaw, thanks very much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.